Hey everybody, welcome back to the TPL show. First off, I think we maybe owe the listeners an apology.
Why is that?
Well, we haven't recorded them.
Well, that's true. We certainly got distracted by hot projects and the holidays and all that stuff. Yeah.
So, 2023. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year to all of our listeners. So here we are. We're recording in our new recording studio.
Yes. We vacated the loft, and we now have studio space.
Studio space, yeah.
In downtown Lebanon, Ohio.
It's very fancy.
Yeah, it's very fancy.
There's sound deadening panels on the wall in this room.
Yeah.
I don't know if that works, but it's there.
But there's no giant semicircular window that makes you feel like you're in Sam Spade's detective office. I miss that.
And you're not going to hear fire trucks going down the street.
Yeah. Ladder 11 is no longer a block away. So
if you do hear a fire truck, it's probably something serious because it's probably inside this building.
Yeah.
So just FYI.
Yeah.
Okay. So all right, let's move on with today's episode. So today we are going to be talking about the little guy.
The little guy.
So let's get into it.
Okay.
I'm Luke.
I'm Dave.
And this is the TPL show.
Welcome to the TPL show, a podcast dedicated to the study and discussion of leadership. Join us as we share relevant, simple, and lasting methods for improvement that can be used to lead from any level in any organization.
All right, the little guy. Dave, tell us who is the little guy.
Okay. So the little guy is a version of yourself that lives in your head. It's an inner voice that seeds doubt, fear, and self-hatred. The little guy is a dark part of you that tears you down and pushes you to be petty and negative. It's an inner voice that we must all overcome if we seek to live happy, healthy lives.
So everybody has a form of this.
Everybody has some form of this dark inner voice, which we at Avanulo call the little guy.
Right. Is this a version of, would you call this a version of self-conscience?
Sure. So, in ancient times, people described what was going on inside our heads in in story, with characters, with themes. They could certainly observe these things, but they couldn't study them very scientifically, right? So since ancient times, a common view of what's going on inside a human mind is that there are many voices inside of us. And these voices form kind of a chorus in the ancient Greek sense, right? And they respond and comment and so forth as you're moving through your day in life. And so there's this one negative voice in the chorus, which we call the little guy. So that's what it is.
Yeah.
So we're talking about leadership, right? And we're always talking about increasing ways to think, plan, and lead, TPL.
Sure.
So that you can be an effective leader. And the whole premise of the show is that no matter where you are on your leadership journey, if you study and practice the science and the art of leadership, you'll become a way better leader than you are now.
Right.
So you can employ this study of leadership and become a better and better leader. It's a continuous improvement approach to your leadership capability. And so it's it's time to talk about the little guy, because everybody has a little guy in their head, and leaders have to address this to become the best leaders they can be. So that takes us to the why. We usually do this: what, why, how,
Right.
in our format, right? So,
And today we're doing the who, why, how.
yeah,
Since
today we're
talking
doing the
about-
who, why, how,
quote,
right?
unquote.
Because it's the little guy. So we've talked about who.
Let's move to the
So
why.
what? Why is it important
Right.
to overcome the little guy for leaders?
Okay, it's important because to lead well, leaders need full capacity of their minds.
Mm-hmm.
They must have time to think, and those thoughts have to be very clear.
Sure.
This little guy robs leaders of valuable thinking time.
Yeah.
And that results in less effective solutions, less inspirational interaction, and even less time leading.
Sure,
overall.
it does. Yeah. I mean, if you think of our brains as kind of like a computer,
Yep.
we only have so much space available to process things. And if we clog it all up with these unproductive, maybe even counterproductive
Right.
thoughts of the little guy, we're reducing the capacity we have to think, plan, and lead.
For the good stuff.
Yeah.
Full of the bad.
For the good stuff. Yeah. Great way to say it.
Okay.
So that's at the heart of the matter. Is it's important because to be a better and better leader, you have to learn how to overcome this little guy in your head, because the little guy is destructive,
Right.
distracting, and takes you off task.
Do you think most leaders are aware of the little guy?
I don't think so. As a matter of fact, when we train senseis in our organization,
Right.
which are the internal consultants of our clients, and we talk about the little guys, we caution them quite carefully not to use this as a widely spread lesson plan or approach, because some people can be, very offended by even the notion that there are voices in their head, or that there are negative thoughts dominating their thinking, so forth and so on.
Yeah.
So it's something to know about for sure, but I don't think many leaders think about this. And if you look at the literature, not much is written or taught about this idea, about how you have to overcome this kind of negative aspect of self. Right?
That's true. You see a lot of stuff out there about self-love and trying to inspire positive thinking, but it doesn't really address this specific.
Yeah, it almost
topic, right?
talks around it.
Right.
It's
like, you can have negative thoughts, but it's not really an ongoing thing that you have to battle.
Yeah. And so if you sit quietly with your thoughts and kind of become aware of your thoughts, you can kind of push yourself aside for a minute and just watch your thoughts, right? Many times we're saying things to ourselves like, I'm stupid. I screwed that up.
Yeah.
I'll never get that right. Nobody likes me. They don't recognize my authority.
Right.
My boss doesn't support me. On and on and on. These kinds of thoughts race through our minds and just clog it up.
Yeah. A lot of the times that inner voice is not intentionally, but a lot of the times it's negative.
Yeah.
Like it's just the way we've been raised or the way we grew up. It's just kind of always stemmed to a negative state.
Sure.
It doesn't always have to be that way. And of course, with practice, as we're talking about, you can get into that positive mindset that reduces the negative thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we talk about the why, right, we've got this why about it just is unproductive because it limits the good thinking that you need to do. But there's also this very kind of realistic aspect, which is if you're not doing that good thinking, then you're suboptimizing the results that you achieve. And if you are doing that good thinking, you're optimizing more and more the results you achieve. And people are studying this. when we have a positive inner voice and we apply that to leadership, we get a better outcome, we get better results, and those results promote better results and a more positive view and a more positive outcome, and you get this cycle of very positive things when you minimize this negative voice in you.
Okay. How does somebody do this?
Yeah.
So how can somebody overcome this negative little guy in their head?
Sure. So it's simple. If we talk about the how-to, it's simple in the list. It's simple in talking about it. You know, when you make the checklist of what are the things you do, it's very simple, but it's actually more challenging than it sounds, right? So we need to keep that in mind and not kind of be glib about it when we're talking about this is a process that can take some time.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's not something it's not a switch that you just flip on and off.
Yeah, yeah. So the first thing is to acknowledge that the little guy does indeed occupy space in your head and commit to contain it.
There's the awareness.
Right? So, yep, this little guy is rolling around in there. He's taking up valuable time. He's sub-optimizing my ability to lead, which is then sub-optimizing the organization. It's causing people to be disengaged. You know, whatever.
It's a trickle down effect.
It's a trickle down effect, right? So to acknowledge the little guy is there, and then set a commitment in your mind to
contain
put a stop to that or contain it, right?
Okay.
So that's the first thing. So the second thing is then keep that little guy contained.
Lock him up.
So this is, easier said than done, right? And so every time the little guy starts talking in your mind, you have to start building the habit of, hey, stop it, be quiet, and quiet that negative inner voice and just put it aside, right? Let it die, let it drift away, and so forth. And a very simple way to do that is when you're making big decisions, you've got important interactions, throughout that process, just to ask yourself periodically, am I keeping the little guy out of this? Is the little guy showing up here? Right? And this is a question you're asking inside your own mind, and you're answering and then adjusting accordingly, right? So the path for doing this is just practicing it, thinking about it, and you build your own very specific how-to in terms of how to keep the little guy contained. Some people sit for a minute quietly and refocus. Some people might exercise. Yeah. Some might rest, right? Some might go do a sport, get with a loved one, whatever it might be. Yeah. You'll find your own way through this if you become aware that when that little guy surfaces, you quell that and then work on keeping that little guy contained.
And I, of course, think that the more you practice this, the better your awareness becomes, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? So once you're used to checking in and saying, okay, am I keeping the little guy out of this?
Yeah.
It becomes more natural. And then subconsciously, I think you are already starting to do that by removing that negative thought.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. So
yeah, I think that's...
In an episode in the near future, we'll talk about leadership kata. So kata is the thing that martial arts students and experts use. Often they're called forms. Kata is the thing they use to specifically move in certain defensive or offensive postures, right? To make that punch or kick or to make that body throw. And you repeat these again and again and again as you study a martial art until you become so proficient in them, you can do them automatically.
Yeah, just train your body to make that movement.
Yeah, and then that gives you this advantage in the moment when you're having to defend yourself, etc.
It's a reaction versus a...
So the great leader and engineer Taichi Ono, of course, knew about this idea of kata, and he kind of transformed the way you can think about management and saying, not only are there physical kata, but there are leadership kata. So there are things you can do, 5 questions in a row you can ask, or 3 things you can do, and it forms a leadership kata, and then you can practice those over and over and over again, and until you become very proficient at them.
Yeah.
And it really increases your leadership. So we'll talk about those in some detail in another episode. But right now, I mention all that just to say this idea of checking in with yourself and keeping the little guy out of it, it's a unique and personal leadership kata that you build, but it's an inner kata. You're not asking the question outside with others. You're asking or going through that process, whatever it might be for you, that kata to contain the little guy. You're developing a personal internal kata to contain the little guy.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's keep the little guy contained. Another thing you can do is optimize your inner coach. Just like there's this little guy that's negative, there's an inner coach that's an inner voice, but it's very different. Very different than the little guy.
This is the positive side?
It's the positive side. This where the little guy hates you and wants you to be destroyed, right? The inner coach loves you and wants you to prosper, succeed, and be happy. So you can give this inner coach more space in your mind and help this inner coach to develop and your ability and grow your ability to listen to this inner coach, right? So there are there's many ways,
right,
but there are 3 nice ways to do that.
Okay, what are those?
The first is to practice Hansai. Hansai is the art of self-reflection.
Okay.
So you think about your day or your week. You get a routine together where you sit down and reflect. Maybe every day, maybe every week, whatever makes sense for you. And you look back at the things you did that were suboptimized, that were mistakes, errors, and flaws, and you review them in your mind, and you just ask 3 simple questions. And we're going to do a whole show on Hansai, right? But you ask 3 simple questions. What was supposed to happen in that interaction or that plan or that rollout or whatever it might be? What actually happened, and what do I want to do about it? So you reflect honestly with yourself about what you did there and what you could do better, and then make a commitment to yourself to do better next time. So that's Hansai, right? And that really helps bring out that inner coach.
That's good.
The next is Shoshin, and Shoshin is the beginner's mind,
Okay.
right? The beginner's mind is to approach everything as a beginner. Act in your mind as if you're seeing this, hearing about it, learning about it for the very first time.
Never done it before.
Yeah.
Got
Be
it.
very open-minded, be questioning, be very gentle of spirit about it, and so forth. The little guy hates that kind of openness and curiosity and youthful energy, right? So, and the inner coach loves it.
Yeah.
So when you approach everything with a beginner's mind, you're really limiting the ability of the little guy to get a foothold in the moment.
Can't really feed on that.
Yeah, yeah. And a good way to kind of optimize your inner coach also is to read the book, The Wise Advocate, The Inner Voice of Strategic Leadership. And this is by Art Kleiner, Jeffrey Schwartz, and Josie Thompson. This book takes you to the decision-making process and helps you to develop a positive mindset around how you make decisions in business and decisions as a leader. And it gives you, it's not saying it specifically, it's not saying there's a little guy, but it's teaching you how to be very positive and optimize that positivity in your decision-making and so forth, and create a more wholesome, balanced approach to leading strategically and making good decisions. So it's one of the very few books out there that really addresses this issue in a how-to way. It's got some theory, but it's got a lot of application. So that's really what
a good
makes
one
it
to check
valuable. So we've said so far, acknowledge the little guy exists.
Got to acknowledge.
And commit to contain it. Then work on keeping the little guy contained. Develop that internal leadership kata.
Yep.
Optimize your inner coach,
Optimize
the opposite of the little guy.
Yep.
Practice Hansai, Shoshin. Hansai, the art of reflection. Shoshin, the beginner's mind. And read this book, The Wise Advocate, the inner voice of strategic leadership.
Okay.
Right. So then the next step on this journey is to develop a noble purpose, a life vision, and a personal code of ethics. So we've done a show on personal code of ethics. We'll talk about developing noble purpose in life.
We've talked a little bit about noble purpose.
Sure, we did, but we did it more in the
vision.
context of an organization
Right.
as opposed to personal. So what's your purpose in life?
Got it.
And what's your vision for your own life? And then what's your code of ethics? It's kind of a personal PVV, purpose, vision, and values, right?
Like it.
So develop that so that you can use it as a leverage against the little guy.
Kind of use it as a guide.
And as a guide,
Yep.
yeah. And then the last thing is to find a mentor, or even better yet, establish a personal board of advisors, and then share your little guy encounters with that mentor or that personal board of advisors.
Got it.
So whether it's one person or it's many people, whether they actually know they're formally your board of advisors or they're formally your mentor, or they don't know that, but you're just seeking them out. None of that's relevant. All that matters is for this mentor or personal board of advisors is that they're people who genuinely care about you. They are on the outside world what your inner coach is to you inside your mind. They just love you and they care about your prospering and your happiness and your success. They have no hidden agenda.
Right.
They're not trying to live vicariously through you. They just are people who actually love you and care about you. So it could be one person, it could be many. They might know they're on the board.
Yeah.
You might not say that, but to have these people you can go to, and because they just care about you, you can talk to them openly and honestly about many things. What are your plans? What are your fears? Where is the little guy robbing you of time and so forth? And get advice from these people.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
So for those that don't have a mentor yet, or they don't have a group of people that they can bounce things off of, like we talked about, how does one go about that? Like how can you approach somebody to say, hey, would you be my mentor?
So there are people in your life that you already trust. And you don't have to say to them, will you be my mentor?
Sure.
Or will you just can approach them. They're your mates, right? They're not necessarily the smartest, the most successful, the biggest deals.
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, none of that matters. But they're just your mates. And they care about you. Could be your brother, could be your pastor, could be the person you bowl with, right? So it's, do you know that they really care about you? And so you seek those people out, and whether you do it formally or informally, you approach them and share this and consider the advice they give you very, very seriously.
Right.
Because if they care about you, then it's just coming from the heart and they're only trying to help you. They're not working any kind of an agenda. But what if you don't have anybody like that in your life, right? Okay. Then you have to find somebody like that, because no one is an island. So if you don't have someone like that in your life, then you got to take a step back, and that's a whole other discussion, of course. But you need to seek those kind of people in your life to be a balanced leader.
Develop those relationships.
You have to develop those relationships somehow.
Okay.
And
That's good.
and we can talk about that if we need to, right?
Yeah.
We're happy to talk about that if anyone wants to reach out to us.
To listeners, I think that's a good one to do. We can do that.
Yeah, and there are people who are just available. They just love people. You might not know them very deeply or for very long, but they just love people and they love you and they want to help you, right? So one way or another, this idea of having a mentor or a personal advisory board is very, very valuable in helping you keep the little guy.
I like that.
Yeah,
That's good.
Under control.
Okay. Yeah, very good.
Okay. So
Anything else on the how side?
no, acknowledge, contain them, optimize the inner coach. Make sure you're working against a noble life purpose, vision, and personal code of ethics, and
Mentors.
get a mentor or mentors. Yeah.
Got it. I like it. Very good. Okay, that's it for today's episode. As always, please like and share, and we ask our listeners to go to whatever platform you're listening on and leave us a review.
Yeah, please do.
So we're really looking for some feedback from our listeners. We have an email address, info@tplshow.org. Send us a comment, send us some questions, or just send us a review in our inbox. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know if there are any topics you'd like to hear in the future, or any questions you have about previous topics.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just want to get some feedback. So
Yeah,
really
and we want to help any way we can. By the way, just a little peek at the calendar coming up.
Okay.
We don't have the details worked out yet, but we're going to schedule an open forum for listeners
Yes.
where people can call in, but we'll also probably be at a physical location, so some people could
Yes.
actually show up. But our listenership is global, so that may be difficult. But we'll have a way to call in and let leaders bring up the things that they're concerned about,
Yes.
and we can talk about them. We'll have a panel. It won't be just Luke and I.
I love this idea.
And we'll kind of respond to the things that you pose, and also talk back and forth. Have a dialogue, so to speak, and together we can perhaps provide some leaders that are listening with advice and the benefit of our experience. So we'll more information on that, and you can look for that on the website, etc.
Stay tuned. Yeah, we'll let you know where we're going to post that information at, but we will get that on the calendar for sure. So thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the TPL Show. We hope you'll apply what you learned today and tell us how it went. If you want to share, want more information, or have questions, please contact us at info@tplshow.org. Have a great day.